All right, we're going to zip through a little bit quicker because otherwise it's just about two. We won't get to the best part, which is the end, I think, personally. Spoiler alert, it's about talking about our victories. So I'm excited for that. Should your client apply for a lawyer? Generally, if a social worker is involved, I say yes. Other things to consider. Proof of income, you might want to help them gather that information, as they're considering applying. Requesting a specific lawyer. Certainly, if the client has a working relationship or a trust relationship already built with a lawyer, I would say if you can advocate with the intake worker for them to have that specific lawyer, or even reach out to that lawyer in advance, do it. Other options, if the client either applies and doesn't qualify for whatever reason, income or other, Justice Access Centers, Family Justice Centers. If your client's Indigenous, there's the Indigenous Justice Centers that are currently, there are 3 open, the rest are virtual. They are opening more. Access Pro Bono's Lawyer Referral Service, Duty Counsel. Vancouver and Victoria, of course, have heaps and heaps of options for clients for free legal advice, low-cost legal advice. It can be trickier outside of those areas, but I'm always happy to, if I've got a client who has, even if it's collaterally related, but not something I'm able to help them with, find them another resource, a free resource or a low cost resource for sure. Okay.
There's another great comment in the chat, if that's okay. It's a really good suggestion.
Okay.
It's talking about the group suggests a lawyer could build trust and feeling of safety for the client by being in a more neutral home type setting, living room type scenario, and have a dog present, which the person says is the best suggestion. And just to make space and time for questioning and processing.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how hard it was going to be when I see names that I know to not use them, because I was told not to, keep it confidential, keep it anonymous. Hello, I will say to that comment writer, it's good to hear from you. The dog suggestion, yeah, that's fantastic. I'm a lover of animals, as anyone who knows me knows, and I love that too. That's wonderful. And I see also someone said that they've made arrangements with the band office to see Indigenous clients there on reserve rather in town where my office is. Oh, most certainly. That's a fantastic idea, right? Yeah, if you can keep it in community, please do. Oh, first names can be okay. If it's something sensitive, I'll edit it out. Sensitive. I wonder what that would be. Okay, first names can be okay. Hi, Dawn. That's wonderful. Hi, Julia. Joyce, so good. This is so great. This is I feel like it's a really strange reunion that we're having here of folks that I've worked with over the years. It's wonderful. Okay. Making contact with your client's lawyer, that sounds really easy, right? Your client gets a referral, they give the lawyer a call, or maybe the lawyer calls them first. Easy peasy. Oh, sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes I can't find my client. Legal aid maybe gave me old information. So I always say, you know what? Be proactive, give a call, advocate or a client, support them to call their lawyer. I know, especially now in 2021, phone call anxiety is huge with so many people. We don't like using the phone, us humans, anymore. And we used to dig it so much. But prepare them for, most likely lawyers going to ask them to review and sign a retainer agreement. I do. Mine is very detailed because I like to make sure there's a document that folks can refer back to. COVID considerations. Certainly right now, it can be really tough to be in person, right? We're all online right now, and that can just add another layer of difficulty in building relationships. So I tell folks, and I hope that they take me at face value when I say, listen, if you think of a way that we can work together better, client, advocate, support, whoever, let me know. Let me know. I'm happy to do it. Social worker, right? I think it's good to be creative. It's good to be collaborative. It's good to think outside of the box. And like I said, if you haven't looked at the tariffs, the legal aid lawyer time limitations, feel free to check that out on the website just to get a really good idea of exactly what amount of time we have. Right now, it's general preparation, 20 hours. And that's everything, unless I can fit it into one of the other categories, which is preparing for collaborative processes, which is 10, 4 hours for collateral, 2 hours for Indigenous client services. I'm blanking on what the other ones are now, but preparing for a CCO, they give us an additional 6 hours. So that's pretty great. I'm being facetious. It's not great at all. But hopefully, and I know there are lots of great folks working to increase those numbers. So hopefully that'll happen soon. Hopefully there are folks in charge listening that, I don't know, take me at face value and increase the time. Anywho. Okay, so breakout session number 2, I feel like maybe, you know what? I think if it's okay, we'll skip breakout session number 2 because it's quite similar. I feel like we'd be going back in time. The first one was about already talking to your lawyer or to your client and their lawyer, and this one's about your client meeting their lawyer. So if anyone wants to talk about making first contact with a lawyer, let me know after the fact. We can do that, but I think we'll zip through because it's not the most relevant at this point. This photograph cracks me up to no end. Sometimes clients just can't find their lawyers, not me. I am very visible and I do not hide unless I am taking a break, which is important. However, I know sometimes I've had advocates call me and say, hey, do you know where so-and-so lawyer is? My client was just referred to them by legal aid and we can't find them. It happens. Google, the Law Society lawyer lookup is supposed to be up to date. However, if you need to go back to the intake worker at legal aid and say, hey, we can't find the lawyer, do it, right? Hopefully they'll be able to find them. But that's just a note. I want to recognize that sometimes clients and advocates can't find lawyers and that's not okay. Not me though. I'm very easy to find. Okay. Confidentiality is one of those things that, here, let's scroll. Got to scroll down in my notes. Okay. Confidentiality is one of those, it seems simple, but it's something that I always reinforce to my clients that unless I have to share it, so unless it's me telling social worker, director's counsel, judge, right? I'm this person's lawyer. If we're in court talking to the judge or the clerk, I have to share that information unless, or legal aid, right? Legal aid requires us as legal aid lawyers to provide a certain amount of information if they ask for it. And also for billing, we have to tell them what we spent our time on. And that's just due diligence. I'm not going to share, right? I make it very clear to my clients, listen, if a piece of information is shared and you don't want it to be, it is not coming from me, certainly. However, I know for advocates that not all the time is that the case, because sometimes depending on your role or what consents the client signed, sometimes you do have to give updates to the social worker or other service providers, that sort of thing, right? There's a certain amount of information sharing that is required. So I think it's important, both for the client and also for the lawyer. It's good for me to know. And I'll ask, certainly, if I'm having a one-on-one conversation with an advocate, for them to confirm what their confidentiality requirements are and who they'll be sharing information with. Because if they say, well, I am required to give an update to the social worker, I'll say, okay, but that means I need to talk to the client one-on-one and we need to come up with a system, right? Even if it's just stop, for them just to say stop. Or I don't want to share that information, or I don't want to talk about that right now because I know it's going to get back to the social worker, or I'd like legal advice about it first. I think that's very appropriate. For consent for information, I try to get those forms done off the top. I am very happy if an advocate says, hey, I need a consent from you and your client. I'll talk to the client for sure. A way to get around that, of course, though, is meeting with the client present so they're fully aware of what you're talking about. But if you're communicating with the lawyer without the client present, certainly a signed consent helps. And this can be really helpful. We talked about anxiety just briefly earlier, but if a client deals with serious anxiety and being in a meeting situation does not work for them, certainly some information sharing can happen. Advocates are great folks to help in making appointments for group meetings, collaborative processes, right? If they know the client's schedule, then they can just make the appointment on behalf of the advocate and the client, remove the need for the client to weigh in on scheduling, right? Administrative matters, setting meetings, that sort of thing. And then also when perhaps the client's in a treatment program and the advocate has had a chance to connect with them and is able to give the lawyer an update on supports and services. I've had a lot of clients who have gone into a program and they just, it's after hours or whatever, they haven't been able to give me a call. They go in on the weekend, but they can reach their advocate, or they can, they can text, and the advocate will call me and say, hey, so-and-so has, gone to this treatment program. They're away for this many days, and you can expect to be able to contact them, in 2 weeks is usually the way it goes. So just some notes on that. Very important to me. Okay. All right. Okay. Asking curious questions. And I think this applies to advocates and lawyers, but again, sometimes the communication between advocate and client is easier. So if the advocate can be prepared before the lawyer meeting with some of these answers, I think it's always a good thing. Certainly, what does your client want from their lawyer? Right? That's a really big question. And I try never to assume. It's tough in this work. Certainly, I'm sure you all get it, that it's really tough to not want to put certain situations into certain boxes or give them a certain, in your mind, you go, well, X happened, so the following will happen afterwards. The biggest one, the mind shift that I had to experience as a newer lawyer back in the day, was realizing that I can't assume that a parent wants to care for their child full time. If they've been removed, or perhaps if they're dealing in family law situations, right, where it's the two parents dealing with parenting time, can't assume that a parent wants full time with their kids. You just can't. So making sure that as a lawyer, that I know clients' goals, their desires is important, and also knowing if they've changed. And again, that's a really great role, or a way for the advocate to be involved, because if I understand the client's desires, then I'm better able to hear their voice about how they want to make the desires come to reality. And then I'm able to provide them with, the legal situation, right? Because I want to make sure I know what they want, but then in turn, I need to make sure they know what's legally possible. And I mean, thankfully, there are a lot of ways to get really creative. So work outside of the legal system, which is fantastic. And I try to do that as much as humanly possible, but also sometimes, ministry, designated agency, their lawyer comes back and says, no, we're not going to be collaborative. It's not happening at this point. Nope, not going to do it. And of course, that goes against the tenets of the law in place. It goes against the new act, C-92, we'll talk about in just a moment. But that ability, I've talked about this before just earlier, but the ability for the advocate to translate what the client is saying to the lawyer, and then to translate what the lawyer is saying to the client, especially when they're technically speaking the same language, is so valuable. So, and that helps very much to manage expectations on all sides, really. And also knowing, what can a lawyer do? Lots of lawyers are very open about what they will and won't do. Some are slightly less transparent. So just sharing and obtaining information, it's a good thing. It's a good thing always. Also, if you haven't considered putting together a little blurb that you can make it clear to clients, lawyers, what your role is, I think that's a really good thing. If you can communicate to the lawyer, especially if there are things that you're not able to do, or certain subjects you're not able to deal with, whatever they might be. If there's going to be a time limit on your service with the client, certainly make sure the lawyer knows that. If you're only going to be around for 2 months, make sure they know. It's just a good thing. However, as a lawyer, it's important that advocates are aware that, and I'm sure you all are, however, I think it bears repeating, my instructions as a lawyer have to come from the client. It's my professional responsibility. It's got to be the client who's driving the bus. So something I'll often do, just to make sure, like to cover my own backside, is to ask the advocate if they wouldn't mind stepping out briefly so I can confirm instructions. And if the client says, no, I don't want the advocate to leave, we can get a bit creative about that. But that's just important to know. There are some things that even though the client and the advocate might be saying exactly the same thing, as a lawyer, I need to hear it from the client. So that's important to be aware of. Okay. Oh, memory is so tricky and so very affected by trauma and stress. And any human being dealing with child protection is in a traumatizing, traumatic, and stressful situation. That is why I love having an advocate at a meeting, either just with me or a collaborative process with the social worker, family case planning, that sort of thing, or in situations where I'm not present, like a family group conference. It's so fantastic to have an advocate present with the client to be the one taking written notes, either typed or handwritten, specifically because the stress of being present in that situation with the client is so tough. And to ask them also to be their own note taker if they don't need to be, I think is it's just an added level of difficulty that we don't need, and it creates anxieties. So yeah, communication is key. It really is. There are always going to be times when you need to think to yourself, what do I know from the client that they're not telling the lawyer? But also, advocates are fantastic because you're all experts in supports and services. So being able to explain to a lawyer, it's one thing for me as a lawyer to know the title of a service or a support, a program that my client's in. It's another thing to know what it is, right? Like I can spew out the title in court, no problem, if a judge says, what's your client doing, or whatever, but in a family case conference, let's say. But yeah, an advocate explaining to me what the significance of a program is always a good thing, especially if I'm working in an area where I haven't done a lot of work before. Note taking is important. File maintenance is important. And also, if you are able to provide documents to the lawyer, I find that so helpful. If an advocate is able to just either scan everything in a stack and send me one PDF, or just send me what they've got. Send me paper copies in the mail, whatever works, just so that I've got, if they have copies of court documents, sometimes it's just easier if they can hand them straight to me at the beginning of a referral. And then any certificates of programs completed, any letters of support they might have received from community or family, employer, friends. And then if they've got any like reports, medical reports, any diagnoses, sometimes psych reports are floating around, parental capacity assessments float around. And by that, I mean they exist, not that they are in the ether. But getting all of that stuff from an advocate can be so much easier, of course, than getting it from a client who doesn't have access to a scanner or a printer or whatever, or even the certificates themselves. Right? Things go missing. And then always confirming next steps. I love to do that at the end of a meeting for sure. Make sure all is clear for everybody, or as clear as it can be in a very unclear area of the law. Yeah, and that maintains accountability for the lawyer included. Making sure, right, at the end of the meeting, if everybody knows what their specific personal next step is, being able to come back and go, okay, lawyer, did you do that thing you said you were going to do? Really, the lawyer should lead with, I like to lead with, here's what I did. Let me share first. Let's get it out of the way. That's always a good thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, breakout session. Let's do this one, Sarah. When the lawyer-client relationship struggles, sometimes lawyers and clients, they just do not get along. Oh, great. So Sarah's put the breakout. I won't read it since we're limited time, of course. But yeah, Sarah, if you want to put us into groups, we can talk about how advocates are great at helping out when lawyers and clients aren't getting along.
Okay, Stephanie, would you like to go back into a room?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'll do.
All right, thank you all. So, challenges faced when dealing with a lawyer-client relationship that's struggling. In my group, we talked about the advocate that was sharing. I've worked with the lawyers that she works with, and so I thought, there's no way that anyone would ever struggle in a relationship with them. However, sometimes it happens. And it was brought up that oftentimes clients' expectations are much greater than the limits on what the lawyer can do for them. So managing expectations, asking specific questions is important to make sure the client is on the same page as the lawyer about, it's not that I don't want to help for everything. It's that that's simply not my role. So that's helpful. That's very helpful. No one else has commented, so I figured that everybody was just doing some good-natured lawyer bashing for 5 minutes. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. But if that's what you're doing, then, more power to you. This is, like I said, the community of advocates, so valuable, and that you have built the community that exists is, it's really great. It's really great. It's inspiring for what's possible with lawyers, for sure. Which is not to say that, the child protection bar isn't a great community. Certainly on Vancouver Island, every lawyer I can think of that takes child protection files is somebody that I enjoy working with just about, across the board, which is very cool. I'm now realizing, now that I've thought of it. Okay, yes, the client's dissatisfaction with the lawyer is often based on the limits of the legal system and their happiness with that. Being able to explain the system to the client often helps. Certainly, yeah, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here for sure. Thank you, Sarah. That's a really good point. Okay. Oh, we talked about being empathetic. Oh, comments are coming so fast. I'm missing them. There we go. Okay. So Julia says, we talked about being empathetic, but checking in to make sure the client has fulfilled all the things they were supposed to do. That's a good call, right? Accountability on both sides. I think that's good. I think that's reasonable. And then Kelsey says, assessing fit with the lawyers, since lawyers have different styles, if possible, might not be enough lawyers to do this. Emotional coping skills, summarizing legal issues. Yeah, thank you. It's very astute. Appreciate that. Okay. So also, advocates have a unique role. Moving on to the next slide here. And if there are more comments, I'll take a peep back. Oh, there was one that I missed. My apologies, Dawn. The advocates I was chatting with let me know they can prepare affidavits and court documents, which the lawyer can then vet, which will help save time for the lawyer. Fantastic. Yeah, I would love to know that, if that's something that, certainly I can think of a few advocates I've worked with recently that have done that, but that's a really good point. Thank you, Dawn and Dawn's group. That's wonderful. Okay. Assessing fit with the lawyer. Oh, we already went over that one. It was so good, I wanted to read it twice. Okay, so advocates are also able to assist in building relationships, client relationships with social workers, for sure. And that, it solidifies the supports. It solidifies, I would hope, in the social worker's view, what the supports are that the client is drawing on, so legal and advocate-wise. And also, shows that there's a united front, right? I love being part of a team. And as a sole practitioner, sometimes it feels like those opportunities are few and far between. So knowing that an advocate is going, nope, I've made sure that the lawyer and the client and I were all on the same page. We are a unified team. That's fantastic. You can also, I put squeaky wheel gets the justice, right? Me making 2 phone calls might not have any additional effect, but if I'm calling a social worker to get them on board with something, and the advocate is as well, and the client is, that certainly brings things to the forefront. You tend to get faster attention from a social worker, I find, if there are more people calling. I don't like to encourage that all the time, because certainly social workers are busy as well, but it's possible for sure. Avoiding redundancies, right? If it only merits 1 phone call, an advocate and I are on the same page, advocate says, I'll handle this with the client, you don't need to. I go, fantastic. That's wonderful. I've got other client work I can be doing for sure. Maintaining communication, same goes. Advocates being able to have, especially where an advocate has a prior relationship with a social worker that maybe the lawyer doesn't, or, lawyers who run trials, if we've cross-examined a social worker, it's really tough to come back and build a trust relationship there between the lawyer and the social worker. So that's when advocates truly do are so very valuable. We talked avoiding redundancies, building efficiency. Oops. Like I said, when matters are super adversarial. There are also some parts of, I know Vancouver Island, some parts on the mainland where social workers won't meet with clients and lawyers unless the social worker's lawyer, so director's counsel, is present. So in those cases, I rely on my clients' advocates certainly to be the the note takers at those meetings, because it's one thing to have a meeting with a support or service or a lawyer where the advocate's taking notes. It's another thing when it's the social worker talking and the advocate's able to note down exactly what they said to make sure everyone's on the same page, and then being able to communicate that back to the lawyer. So truly the team is all on the same page, because I know we've all had clients who go, social worker says one thing, I say another. And then it turns out that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but I understood X, and social worker's saying I should have done Y. And that's not what happened. And there were no witnesses. And now I'm in trouble, and maybe I can't see my kids. So advocates, valuable, beyond price. Certainly. We've got a couple of, we got some folks chatting to each other in the chat box, but here we've got Gary saying, I was denied a support role at an FM conference because the social worker's lawyer would not be present. Interesting. Inappropriate. Very interesting. That's shocking to me. I would hope that that was a blip and not a pattern. But if that's what the social workers are doing in that area, maybe, they saw you as legal counsel. Interesting. I'm not impressed with that situation that you found yourself in. Hopefully they came around to realizing that you were supportive and not legal counsel. But they clearly saw you as very knowledgeable about the legal system, which I suppose is a very good thing, but not if it meant your client was less supported. That's really too bad. Okay. However, thank you. That leads us into expanding the team, which is especially important when the backgrounds of both the advocate and the lawyer don't reflect the client's background, either in terms of, two non-Indigenous advocate and lawyer working with an Indigenous client, or any culture that's not represented by programming in their area. I'm thinking about folks, especially anybody who's immigrated to outside of Victoria or Vancouver. There are certainly some supports and services for new immigrants to Canada, but not as much. So there's an opportunity to be very creative, I think. And COVID, lots of negatives. The let's say positive of the COVID situation is that so many programs have gone online. So all of a sudden, programs that were only available in either Victoria or Vancouver area, Lower Mainland, are available across the province, which is wonderful. So being able to connect your clients with those, being able to find, right, if an advocate has time or their organization has someone, I cross my fingers that there are some organizations with dedicated support and services researchers, but I realize that's probably pie in the sky thinking. But being able to take a certain support or service to, if there's a cost involved, take it to the social worker and say, listen, my client should do this program and I want you to pay for it, or a ministry should pay for it, or any other funding organization, right? If you've got, if there's funding through First Nations, through bands, through whoever, right? Whatever ministry, if a client's on disability support or dealing with workers' compensation, WorkSafe, there are creative opportunities for funding. I'm thinking of LGBTQI clients and their family members who are LGBTQI clients, or full stop, they're not the clients, the families, any families with disabled folks, if the client is disabled, certainly, if they're dealing with serious medical concerns, all of these are opportunities. If it's not something that both the lawyer and the advocate, either or both, are familiar with, expanding the team is important. So other support workers, family members, counselors, mental health supports, folks helping out with life skills, the importance of advocates in creative and collaborative processes, your mediations, your family group conferences. I'm doing a bit more work up island, sort of Port McNeill, Port Hardy, and I was introduced to the concept of a NAMIMA meeting. And just the other options that are available that as a lawyer, I'm really only going to find out about if an advocate and I have a conversation and build a connection, the advocate and I. So I'm always very happy to do that. And Yeah, and I hope you like this photo. I thought it was quite nice. The background photo here, all of us paddling together. Yeah. Oh, and a note. We talked a bit before of whether or not an advocate might have a time limit on their role, or if something, I'm thinking, I've had a couple of advocates who only worked with folks in either a prenatal or a young infant capacity. So once their child was a certain age, they were no longer able to help the client out. And so that's why I think expanding the group is so important as well, because that continuity of care, especially if it's a situation where we've had, just in this area geographically, we've had a number of lawyers recently who've left the practice, either to take different jobs or they've left lawyering entirely. And so there's been a scramble to place their clients with other lawyers. And the files where I've had advocates that have been continuous with my client from lawyer to lawyer, those are the ones where I'm able to get up to speed the fastest. And certainly that's a huge benefit, right? The less time I have to read through documentation, right, and go back in history, essentially, the more time I had to do work with the client, right? Yeah. And I'm thinking of a couple of examples where lawyers, for whatever reason, stopped representing clients, and there were trials coming, and the client didn't have a lawyer for months. That happens. It does.